first pick in the 1985 NBA college draft.
As you can imagine, this is a New York crowd
Congratulations
here at the Waldorf Astoria. And I don't think David Busher believes.
Three, two, one. Broadcasting tape delayed from New York City, where the NBA draft was changed forever. The Sports Economy Show is on. I'm Bill. This is JP. We're here to pump you up. Today's show is about the NBA draft is rigged. There's a question, is it not? No, it's rigged, okay? There are two teams that had 1.8% chance of getting the first round pick, and guess what happened? They did. And JP has got the stats on both of them. So anyway, I have a small little introduction here about our favorite commissioner, Mr. David Stern. Yeah, February 1984, David Stern becomes the commissioner of the NBA. In 1985, which is when the NBA draft becomes rigged, David Stern devised a draft lottery system to allow all non-playoff teams a shot at the top pick in the draft as a result of teams tanking in the previous season. I did a show about professional teams tanking, and we all know they do it. They do it in the NFL, don't they? Yes, they do.
You suck. Don't be good.
Yeah.
They get mad at you if you're actually good.
Yeah. You know, if you're only going to win 6 games, why not just win 2?
Yeah, just suck.
Yeah.
You're the best
anyway,
you can be at sucking.
Yes. So David Stern devised a plan to keep teams from tanking, in which he could get the number 1 draft to go to the big market teams like he wanted to. Right? Right.
That's right.
Yes. All right. So Jim Rome. Jim Rome was a jerk, but hey, I like listening to him every once in a while. All right. He did an interview with David Stern in 2012. So before the 2012 NBA draft, Jim Rohn had David Stern on his radio show and asked the then NBA commissioner whether the lottery was fixed for New Orleans. Because that year, New Orleans had moved from Charlotte to New Orleans. They were the Hornets, became the Pelicans.
Right.
That's what happened in 2012. And David Stern's response was, shame on you for asking. Not, no, are you dumb? No, shame on you for asking. Whatever that means. Stern said before dropping his most controversial line of the interview, have you stopped beating your wife yet?
He said that?
Yes. Yeah. Well, according to the internet, that's what he said.
David Stern was damn near mafia, man.
That's right. He was. Dude, you know he had lunch with mafia members in New York City. You know he did. He had their number. He had their number before speed dial. All right.
That's right.
Stern asked to imply he thought Rome's question was a loaded one. Instead of just saying, "No, Jim, this is all just a bunch of media hype. It doesn't mean anything." Mm-hmm. No, he just goes off on him. Shame on you for asking me that question.
Yeah, it's basically like I did not authorize these questions, and I can't believe that you actually asked me that.
Yeah, and when you go out to your car, you're going to have 4 flat tires.
That's
you
right.
Got that? That's a light warning.
You better get somebody else to start your car up.
Yeah. Yeah. The next interview better go a lot smoother than this, mister. Anyway, so I want to start out with saying the first pick in the NBA draft is important. So, JP, why is the first pick the most important pick in the NBA draft?
Well, you're the only team that has your first choice. You know, usually almost every year there's always somebody that literally stands out. In recent years, there haven't been, it's like, okay, well, let's take this guy. But the last couple of years with Wembanyama, is that how you pronounce it? Wemby.
Yes.
What I call him.
Just Wemby for short. We got Tua, we got Wemby.
And then
Yeah.
of course this year with Cooper Flagg.
Yeah.
So they were the premier choices, and there was no. But and really, in the last 10 years, there haven't been those guys that really just stand out. Where if you draft that guy, you're hands down going to win the championship. A future championship.
Yeah, there hasn't been that person. Heck, LeBron,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. Usually the guys that are drafted in the top 5 are good players, but there haven't been those guys where you just go, this dude is going to change my franchise. You just hope that they're a good player. Most of the guys that are stars now were not like LeBron. They weren't the guy that everybody was like, we need that guy, and he's going to win he's going to win this. Yeah. He's going to change our franchise.
Yeah, like the 1985 draft. That guy.
Yeah, that guy. You want me to talk about that real quick?
You got the floor.
Okay. 1985. So let me just kind of give you a little scenario, boys and girls, of how it used to be. What happened in the old days was, hey, it just went by your record. And if you were the worst team and you were also tied with another team as the worst team, they just flipped the coin. Yeah. Literally they were just like, hey, heads or tails, what is it? Okay, you got the first round pick. You got the first pick in the first round. So in 1985, in order to avoid the tanking, they came up with a system that said, hey, a certain amount of teams that don't make the playoffs will be in a draft lottery, and the team that has the worst record has the best chance of winning the lottery. And so what, of course, happens in 1985, the number one clear-cut player in college basketball was Patrick Ewing.
Yeah. And I actually saw, I'm going to put a little bit of clip on this on the video of the actual 1985 draft. The general manager of the Knicks shows up to the lottery selection with a Ewing jersey.
Yes. That's right. Everybody knew who was going.
Everybody knew.
It was just a matter of who was getting them, right? Yeah. And the Knicks, I want to say the Knicks were like the third from the worst odds.
They had a 1.8% chance of being number one.
Right. But of course, a majority of the cities that were in the draft lottery, let's just say we're not cities that.
We're not sending him to Indiana. He's not going to Indiana. No.
He ain't going to Utah. It's just saying like that, right?
Yeah.
So, but here's New York City sitting out there. They haven't had a real winner late in a while. So you know what? Here comes the frozen envelopes, is what everybody claimed happened.
Well, I saw Jim Rome, or was it maybe, anyway, said there was a crease in the envelope. Whatever it was,
right.
He knew which one to pick.
Will now be turned to further mix the envelopes, and then I will conduct the drawing.
That is Jack Joyce. He's the head of security for the NBA, spinning the drum. About 6 turns, I think.
The team whose logo is in this envelope will have the first pick in the NBA draft.
Dave DeBuscher.
The second pick in the 1985 NBA draft goes to the Indiana Pacers.
The horseshoe works. Basketball is back in New York City, my friend.
1985 NBA college draft.
As you can imagine, this is a New York
Gentlemen,
crowd
congratulations.
here at the
to all.
Waldorf Astoria. And I don't think David Busher believes.
Right. There's been a number of things that they've done. They've had it where they had the ping pong balls like regular lottery.
Yeah.
And they've had, and shit. Now they just damn.
You said they just walk out with a thing. There they are.
Here are guys who we're not going to show you what we did, but hey, you just got to trust us.
The deck is stacked.
That's right. So with Patrick Ewing, everybody says that they had it was something that indicated this is the envelope you want to pick, David Stern. And of course, he picked it. And then, of course, because it was going to New York City, everybody was literally like, "It's rigged. This is a debacle." But here's the thing: it was the best thing that ever happened for the NBA. So rigged or not, whether David Stearns planned it or not, it was the best thing that could have happened for the NBA overall, and it happened.
Because David Stern knows how to make money.
That's right.
And that's what he did.
Right.
The Knicks, it's not like he brought the Knicks a championship.
No.
But he brought the NBA profile.
Right. He brought them relevance. And honestly, if it wasn't for the Chicago Bulls, they may have had a couple of championships. They may have a couple of championships. So, but what he did was he made that team and that city relevant when it came to the NBA. And, it worked out.
Yeah. Hey, when New York's relevant, sports is relevant.
Like I will say this.
When the Yankees and the Dodgers are winning.
That's right. When the Yankees, Dodgers are winning, New York, LA, there's certain cities in most sports, when they're good, then things are just better. Yeah.
Except for the NFL. If the Cowboys were winning, the NFL would be even greater, but it's still great and they're losing. So anyway, that's another
win
deal.
Or lose.
Win or lose.
Cowboys are still going to be the top of the top talk shows. Talk shows. Win or lose, they're going to be in it because they either are the worst team in the world or the best team.
Yeah, that's right. Well, anyway, so I got a couple things about these in-season trades because I watched the NBA draft.
Yeah.
And actually, the most entertaining part about it was they had some guy who I think he's a general manager for some team, and Stephen A. Smith, talking in between the draft. That was the most exciting part about it. The Silver Spoon would get up there and introduce somebody, and then he would look confused because there would be an in-trade draft going on. He would have to read it, and he's like, "What is this going on?" Like he didn't have control, and it bothered him.
Right.
All right, so 1985. This is the progression of how players are becoming somewhat irrelevant. There were 4 in-draft player trades, just 4 between different teams. In 2005, there were 8 in-draft trades. In 2015, there were 9. Now, these are all in the first round. Now, the second round has always been irrelevant, actually.
Yeah.
So, in 2025, there were 21 in-draft trades, and every single one of them were complicated between like 4 teams and 8 players moving. It was just, I was like, what is all this? This is crazy.
What do you think that means?
Here's what I got it. I wrote it down. I'm going to read it to you because I can't recall it. It said, now that the NBA is a positionless game, the players are more interchangeable than ever.
That's right.
Because there's no centers, there's no guards, there's no forwards, there's nothing. There are no bench players. There's just guys that can play better on one night than the other.
Right.
And you do have a few stars like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, whatever. So there's a few, but the rest of them are just like this homogenous thing. They're just out there and they can play any position and run up and down the court. I mean, for crying out loud, people are wanting KD on their team. He's 37.
He's 37.
He's not bringing you to the promised land,
Nope.
folks. What,
Nope.
what do you?
Nope.
But you know, that's all.
I don't
everybody
think there's a
talks
coincidence that Indiana
about. Yeah.
got to the finals. You know, like the trend now, like 20 years ago, the trend was LeBron pairing up with Dwayne Wade
Yeah.
and you know trying winning championships there, and then KD went to Golden State.
They called it the Big Three.
Right. So that was the trend. You know, the Lakers got Paul Gasol. Then once they got him, they added other players, and then they won the championship. That's how they won in that era, right? Those days are over. Most teams have one real star.
Yeah.
And then they just stack their team with good players all around. Indiana Pacers are the perfect example. They had Halliburton, and then the rest of the guys, they just didn't have any weaknesses. Boston had two good players, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
And the rest of the guys are just good players. But what they don't have is a lot of weaknesses. So they look like a dominant team. And that's the way the team is now. So in the draft, they know there's no LeBrons.
Yeah.
So they don't care, you know, about these draft picks. They're just probably just moving money and moving players around. The Lakers drafted Dalton Connect last year.
Yeah.
I thought Dalton Connect was going to be in the future of the team. They damn near tried to trade him halfway through the year last year, and I don't think he hardly played this year.
They tried to trade him for a player who did not pass a physical.
Right. They don't care anymore.
Yeah.
You know, they don't care. It's not about the stars anymore. It's about having a good team.
But if there were stars, they would care.
Yeah.
Cooper Flagg is a star. They care.
They
Once
care.
again, Cooper Flagg had a 1.8% chance of being the number one draft pick. Surprisingly, that he goes to Dallas. Dallas is a major market team, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they just happened to make a trade with the Lakers that everybody thought was damn near questionable.
Yeah.
So
we're back to, is the draft rigged? Well, Wemby, who went to San Antonio. What were San Antonio's odds of getting the number one draft pick? Less than 2?
I think they were. I don't think they were one of the worst teams. I don't remember.
Yeah, what I'm saying is they didn't have a real good chance of getting the number one draft pick.
I don't think they were one of the worst.
Yeah.
So I think they had one of the better teams out of the draft lottery teams, and they won.
Yeah, just like Dallas did, just like several other teams have done, because these guys know, and Silver learned from David Stern, this is how you stack the deck. See, before, Stern tried to play it off. Silver Spoon just walks out there and says, you got the draft pick.
That's right. He's like, I'm not going to even fake it.
It's like a card trick.
He probably went in the back room and be like, all right, boys, who do you think the Cooper Flagg should go to? You know, Dallas did hook up the Lakers. That's pretty good for us.
Pretty
Why
good
don't
for
we
us.
give it to Dallas?
Yeah.
Dallas, it all sound good to y'all? Yeah. Okay, Dallas it is.
Or he could just go, who's the largest market team this year? Oh, Dallas.
Yeah. Works for me. Yeah.
Yeah. So
you know,
I can fully see this happening, that this is what goes on. You know?
I mean, look, you know.
Because it's not a guaranteed he'll bring a championship. What were you saying?
You would think in today's age, you know, you can't trust everybody. So if there was something shady, really shady going on, it would come out. You know, it's like, you know, wrestling.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody knows it's fake. But, you know, there was a time, boys and girls, where people thought it was real.
Yeah.
And then some of the wrestlers came out and was like, man, this shit is fake.
They couldn't do some of the stuff that they do and live if it was real.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
What do you mean you can't? You can't jump 20 feet in the air with a chair
Yes.
and bash somebody over the head,
That's
and then
right.
think, "I can't believe they died from that." They
Yeah.
do it all the time in wrestling.
Yeah. Do it all the time. Jump off a 20-foot ladder. Oh yeah. Yeah. So
Right.
anyway, but if only two people know, the commissioner and somebody who works for him who stacks the deck,
Yeah.
or if they just give him all the cards and he goes into the back room and comes out with them, hands them to somebody and they come out and set them down, it's just on him. You know.
Yeah.
You
never know.
You can keep a secret if it's just you. You can do it.
Right.
So. Either way, the NBA has worked themselves into the upper echelon of all sports. So,
Yeah.
and if fixing the draft requires that, then anyway. Did you say you had something to say about the Bird Magic?
Yeah, man.
Shenanigan?
I looked at some stuff. I went through like the history of the NBA and draft and all that.
Yeah.
Draft day trades. So I just wanted to bring up a few of them that were like significant as far as helping the NBA, right? Things that are associated with the NBA draft, right?
Yeah.
In 1978, Boston Celtics had 2 draft picks, right? 2 in the first 10, two in the first 8, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what they decided to do was use their first of those top 8 picks, and they drafted Larry Bird, who at that time was still at Indiana and literally said, Indiana State, and literally said, I'm not going to the pros yet. I'm going to stay in college. So what did Boston? So back in those days, it's not the case now. Back in those days, you could draft a guy and you had the rights to him until the following next year.
Yeah.
Before the draft, right? So what they did was they drafted Larry Bird, hoping that he was still great and didn't get injured. And then the following, like after the college season, which, by the way, was the championship game with Magic and Bird, they had to sign Larry Bird before the 1979 draft, which they did, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
In 1979, everybody is wondering, how did Magic end up with the Lakers and Larry Bird ended up with the Celtics? Well, the Los Angeles Lakers were not the worst team in the NBA, and they ended up the New Orleans Jazz.
Jazz, yes,
right?
New Orleans Jazz, yeah.
Right. They acquired Gail Goodrich from the Lakers, and the Lakers ended up, for compensation, they ended up getting the Jazz's pick. So they got Gail Goodrich for that 78 season, right? So the Lakers get Jazz's pick, and of course, it comes down to a coin flip again, and the Lakers win the coin flip over the Chicago Bulls, which, a lot of people are like, well, Chicago's just as relevant to LA. Well, they're not really. That's only when they had Michael Jordan. Because
Chicago was an awful team. It was awful. That's why they got the number 3 pick to get Michael Jordan.
That's right. The only time you ever heard about the Chicago Bulls was on Good Times when JJ
would JJ have tickets?
Talk about how bad the Chicago Bulls were, right?
Yeah.
That's the only time you ever heard about the Bulls, right? So of course the Lakers get the number 1 pick. They get Magic Johnson. Other draft day trades that were really good. 1987, Seattle and Chicago Bulls picked their players in the first round, swapped them, and Seattle ended up getting Olden Polynice, who played for Virginia. Was actually a very good player, and other picks. And Chicago Bulls got Scottie Pippen. That worked out pretty good for the Bulls.
Yeah. But Scottie Pippen was not a sought-after player. He played at Arkansas State.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the time,
that wasn't a rigged draft.
Right. At the time, it seemed like Seattle got over on Chicago,
Yeah.
but it turned out it did. 1998, the Bucks and the Mavericks picked their players in the first round, swapped them. The Bucks ended up getting Robert Tractor Trailer.
Yeah.
He was on the team after the Fab Five in Michigan. Big dude.
Yeah.
And he was a higher prospect than the guy that Dallas got in the swap. But it turned out to be their greatest player in their franchise history in Dirk Nowitzki.
Yeah.
In 1994, Fab Five was all the rage. Chris Webber was the number one pick.
Yeah.
And he literally said, hey, I don't want to go to Orlando. So what does Orlando do? They took him. And then he literally was like, man, I don't want to be here. So before they even moved on any further, the Golden State Warriors took Anthony Hardaway and they swapped picks. And Chris Webber ended up going to Golden State. He was actually pretty good for Golden State. And Anthony Hardaway went to Orlando.
Played with Shaq for a couple years.
And he was probably the closest thing to Jordan for a while. He was Kobe before Kobe was Shaq.
Yeah.
It's just injuries downfalled his career. But what makes that a bad trade was Chris Webber went to Golden State, didn't like Don Nelson, the coach. Back then, they had a loophole. Some contracts had loopholes. His did. He forced his way out of Golden State after 1 year, ended up going to Washington. The Washington Bullets at that time played with Juwan Howard, who got drafted by the Bullets that same year, teamed up with his old college teammate, and they were actually pretty good. And then he moved on to Sacramento and actually had a decent career. And lastly, in 1996, the Los Angeles Lakers on draft day traded Vlade Divac to Charlotte.
Yeah.
And they acquired the Charlotte Hornets pick, and the Lakers used that for one high school player named Kobe Bryant, and the rest was history.
Yeah. And now, well, up until NIL started, the NBA every year would try to draft people who they thought were going to be the next Kobe or LeBron based on YouTube videos. It's never worked out.
That's right.
Look at this guy. Look at this guy. Who knows? So anyway, but every time there's a big time player coming out of college, somehow that player goes to the biggest market team. Very interesting. Anyway, I got one more thing.
What you do know.
Yeah.
If they're not a LeBron, if they're not Hakeem Olajuwon or one of those guys, right? It's all a crapshoot, man. It really is. The NBA is not like other sports. Like, there's so many guys that were supposed to be great.
Well, the NFL, they draft quarterbacks that are supposed to be great.
Yeah.
They don't work out. It's the same thing. Talent's a very hard thing to judge.
Right.
So anyway, I got one more thing about this, how the draft, for the most part, is irrelevant in the NBA. On June 15th, the Orlando Magic, the Orlando Magic that you didn't think existed anymore, well, they're still out there. And they're doing what they can to become more irrelevant. Yeah. They traded 4 unprotected first-round picks and 1 first-round swap to the Memphis Grizzlies. Hold on, let me click off that. All right. In exchange, the Magic acquired 1 player, Desmond Bane. So they traded away 5 first-round picks for 1 guy. So that tells you that they don't care. Nobody cares what players are out there.
No. No. If you're not one of the guys that they know that's good, it doesn't matter.
But to think about it, it's like, okay, I'm going to get rid of all my draft picks for the next 4 years for 1 guy. I don't think I would ever do that. But hey,
no. I mean, I honestly, like I mentioned earlier, nobody knew who Dirk Nowitzki was. A lot of times uh, it's just where you are and how you fit in that system. There's so many guys that come and go in the NBA that we all thought were going to be great. I mean, you know, Ray Allen came out of college and everybody was like, oh, he's going to be a good little player. But nobody knew he was going to be a Hall of Famer, and he was one of the greatest shooters ever. Steph Curry came out of Davidson. Nobody knew he was going to be who he ended up being. Occasionally there are a few like Kevin Durant came out of college and was literally like the best player in basketball as soon as he started. But there are a number of guys that, Michael Jordan, the general manager for the Chicago Bulls. Bulls had the 3rd pick in the draft. Olajuwon went first. Who went second, Billy?
Sam Bowie from Kentucky went second.
That's right. And literally the first 2 picks were big men, and the GM, they took Michael Jordan because he was the best player available. And they literally have a quote that says, yeah, we would have liked to have had a big man. Big man is the foundation of the team, blah, blah, blah. Michael Jordan's a very good player, and he's going to do everything he can to make us better. There was nothing that says Michael Jordan is the greatest player we've ever seen, and he's going to change the NBA forever. You don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. Talent is very hard to judge. All right, well, that's all I got for today. So remember, folks, like and subscribe to Sports Economy 101 because we need a gazillion dollars so we can get out there and teach them general managers how to draft talent and not to give away your 4 picks. So long, everybody.
So long, everybody.